Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
Hello, very good afternoon to you, and welcome to Friday's Locker Room. And can't believe this, Robbie. It's a few weeks until we have no locker room and we go in with summer holidays. I can't believe it's been a busy season, but a lot of football to be played between now and the end of the season. Of course, we'll touch upon the Premiership games tomorrow and Sunday, but also we have that Ayr United game and Packet Thistle tonight. And yes, Robbie, you can actually waken up now because hopefully this game will be a better game than Tuesday night. Because I don't know about you, but it was a long hour trying to talk about that game.
Aye, well, when Nick Walsh in charge, I just never really know what's going to happen. But, this almost feels like my ending. This is my last Friday show of the season, so I'm almost treating it like the end of the season. But it's running down very, very quickly. It doesn't feel like that long ago I was going along to Simon for the first game of the season versus Hibs. And now we're reaching the end of the season and we're playing Hibs again on Wednesday night. So it's gone very, very quick.
It's always funny when you see that, Robbie, like when you go along to St Mirren Park or whatever, and you see people wearing heavy jumpers and jackets and all that because it's freezing. And now tomorrow when you go to the football, it's nice and sunny. People will be going on their t-shirts and shorts.
Aye, it's weird how it works. The football goes through so many, different types of wearers. It wasn't long ago, me and my dad were moving seats because how much the rain was affecting the game. And I remember, in particular, the Aberdeen game where we finally beat them and ended an unbeaten run. And that was probably one of the worst weathers I've been to at a game of football. But it is good, obviously, the sun's shining tonight, obviously, for the big playoff game at Ayr. Then into tomorrow, I know some fans have all to wear white away to Tannadice for a nice display, so it should be a good weekend of football.
Yeah, no, exactly. And also, we'll talk about the game, but also we'll be back on Sunday to talk about the game and also including the game at Ibrox as well between Rangers and Aberdeen. Okay, and then we'll get to talk about the Premiership quarter-final second leg in a wee bit then. Get your comments coming in on YouTube, Twitch and X as well. So it's me, Robbie, and Dave will be joining in later on as well. So get your comments coming in. As I say, we'll be here until 7 o'clock. I just thought I would do something a bit different for a change, Robbie, because we always look at the top six at the beginning, and obviously before people comment, it's like Celtic and Rangers and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to mix it up tonight and go to the bottom six as well. Tomorrow there's a big game at Tynecastle between Motherwell, between Hearts and Motherwell.
Yeah, again, it's a very big game. Like I think Motherwell, well, they're obviously confirmed, say, 41 years in the Premiership. That should speak, big volumes. That's an incredible achievement for any football club. That man Motherwell, who, let's not forget they have been through struggles in recent years. It's no all been sunshine and roses there. So for Vima, that's a pretty big achievement. That's step one, keep them up. Now he can go and enjoy the rest of the season. And I think he sent out a warning that these last sort of couple of games are going to be, additions for next season because Motherwell have a pretty big squad. It's, it's not the smallest, so they're going to offload a lot of players. Probably bring some quality players in as well to try and build on next season because I think Vima's a manager that will demand top six. If they want to be in that fight back for European football. It wasn't long ago. Motherwell were in fifth under Kettlewell, and then obviously stuff happened and he had to leave. So I think next season the aim for the Motherwell and Vima will be to get into the top six. But for Hearts, although they are, I think, 8 points clear now of relegation, the threat's still there. It's not completely away. They've got a big game at home. The home crowd need to get behind them because they've not been behind them for the last few weeks anyway. Under Liam Fox again. which obviously we can get into talking about later. It's looking like it's going to be Derek McInnes more and more as the day goes on. So this is going to be a pretty big game. Both teams, I think, are in different circumstances where Hearts need it a bit more, but Motherwell can go there and play with freedom.
Yeah, no, it should be a good game tomorrow as well. What I know, obviously we're coming to the end of the season as well, Robbie. What about and Michael Vima's been in since maybe February time. I can't remember. But what do you think of him? I mean, obviously you see him going to the St Mirren games and all that, and watching him doing interviews, but I actually quite enjoy his interview actually because, as I said to Alistair last week, he's a laughable guy. Like he laughs every 2 minutes, and like he doesn't take it very seriously.
Yeah, he has. He's all smiles. Like I'm sure he's probably quite maybe a serious guy behind the scenes. Obviously, we don't see. Like Vima's start has been weird. That they've not really built up consistency. Obviously, it's a big win away from home last week. A very late goal from Maswination, which was a very, very good header, by the way. But it's not quite been the form that I maybe think Motherwell fans thought was going to happen. And look, it's going to take time again. Motherwell have a pretty big squad, and it's none of his players really. When he came in, he's not even had a window to make signings, so it's going to be a pretty big summer for him. But I'm sure he'll get on fine. He seems like the type of guy that's going to get on well. He's very open and honest. He loves a tea cake as well, so he's fitting right in at home. But it's been a bit of a weird start for Vimad. So.
Yeah, no, exactly, and it's quite. I think we said this at the time, Robbie. I think it's quite refreshing where teams, maybe the Hearts as well, is going after a kind of manager that you don't really think about, because for years, like we went from manager from like England, Ireland, Spain, Italy, but in terms of Michael Vima coming from where he came from, and also Postecoglou as well, like. It's quite good that clubs are now beginning to think, oh, wait a minute, there's other brilliant managers out there. We just have to go and find them.
Yeah, and it's something that's worked well, with Tallinn, as you mentioned, Ange, Vima and there, Valakari. Obviously, I know Valakari's had different spells up here in his playing days, but as a manager, he was sort of unknown. So it's good that this is happening. On the flip side, you look at a team like Hearts, who they're searching for their next manager. They apparently want to come closer to home, which, don't get me wrong, we've spoken on the show multiple times, it can work. If they bring in a guy like McInnes, he's somebody that knows how to get results, knows how to win Scottish football, and I think he'll do a good job at Hearts. But there is two ends of the coin. It's a coin flip. It can work and it can't sometimes. So it's going to be interesting to not only see how Vima gets on next season and Tallinn, because as we'll speak on Aberdeen later, they've got a pretty big game on Sunday. But somebody like Derek McInnes getting into Hearts as well. But it's a big job, so it'll be interesting.
Even though I was saying to you about Michael Vima, when you listen to him, and he's a kind of laughable guy, but you would say like the opposite from Hearts. Robbie, like a few weeks ago, you were like that. Well, Hearts maybe getting to the top 6 and maybe getting to a semi-final of the Scottish Cup, but within maybe 2 or 3 weeks, the wheels just came off the bus and like sacking Critchley as well.
Yeah, well, I'd almost argue maybe Critchley was too nice at the time in his management job. I think that was a general consensus around Tynecastle, that he was maybe a bit too nice to the players and everybody else. Liam Fox is a bit more serious, you've got to say. I listened to his press conference last week. I don't know what he said, obviously, today or yesterday, but he is a bit more a serious guy, but he's also very open and honest, and I think that's the one thing the Hearts fans want. I don't think they want anything hidden. They want a manager to be nice and honest. Also, be quite strict and be serious at the same time as well. If you bring in a McInnes or a Robinson, you know how they sort of operate. They're sort of the serious managers that will say it how it is. They'll set the standards, and it's something that Hearts fans need, because they can't afford to have another season in the bottom 6.
Yeah, of course. Liam Fox was talking whilst some people might call him the fox in the box when they still play football, Robbie. But basically, Liam Fox says that we've had a good week in training, so we'll be ready for the game. And we need to take the game on the front foot, obviously, because Hearts is at home tomorrow as well. But when managers say that, Robbie, as a supporter of St Mirren, and you've got no gripes for Stephen Robertson and the team this season, but when managers come out and say that, like they've had a good week in training, it's totally different from, crossing that white line on a Saturday or Wednesday night or whatever, because, I mean, you can, you can work on systems and all that in training, but in game time, once you cross that white line, you can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few times this season, Robinson and other players have come out and said, I've been working on this and that, and then they try it in the game and you see it and it doesn't really work. It's one of the things. Robinson's I don't think he's that type of manager. He doesn't say it as often as maybe a Philippe Clement did. I think that's a big example. Philippe Clement was out every week going, oh, we've had a great week in training, the boys feel ready for this, and then they don't drop points. So, I'm glad we're not like that. But for Liam Fox, it does just feel like the standard thing to say, but he's no wrong at the same time. They have a big chance, they need to go and be open, they need to get at Motherwell for the first whistle, they need to be the aggressing team, because the longer the game goes on and the longer they've not scored, the more worrying it becomes for them, because if they lose another game, and I think the risk of relegation is very minimal at this point, but it's still on the cards, so they need to go make sure they can secure safety.
Yeah, I mean, just what I pointed out, Robbie, a few weeks ago, that it could be a kind of like successful season to get into the Scottish Cup and to make the top six. And then, as I said, I don't know what happened, but as I say, the wheels came off the bus. But it's a bit like when if you finish below Hibs in Edinburgh, or Hibs finishes below Hearts, that's a poor season, because that's like Celtic and Rangers. Like, if you finish second place, that's like you finish kind of last place.
Yeah, well, I mean, first on the cup, they had an absolute brilliant opportunity. They faced a couple of lower league teams, then they beat us on penalties. Obviously, then they beat Dundee at home. Then the Aberdeen game, I still don't think Aberdeen were excellent on the day at Hampden. I thought they were really weak. I thought they were there to be gotten at. Obviously, Franklin did score a nice goal, but that was probably the one for me that was disappointing. Then you mentioned top six, at home to Dundee United, 2 home games in a row. Actually, you've got to get that wrapped up. There's absolutely no excuse for that not being in the top six then. But you're right. One of the big things this season is it comes down to beating your rivals, and it's something that Hearts haven't done this year under 3 different managers. So, it's something that whoever the next manager may be, whether it is McInnes, John McGlynn, Robinson, whoever it might be, they need to come in and make sure they can beat their rivals, because it's what you're going to get judged on. It's what the last few Rangers managers have been judged on. I remember Michael Beale, Van Bronckhorst, Clement have all been judged on that. It happens to every manager. So whoever it might be needs to come in and make a good impression.
And as for Motherwell, Michael Zuma was talking to Jay as well. He says it'll be a tough challenge this weekend, and looking forward to the game. Looking forward to going to the ski game as well, because it's a brilliant atmosphere at Tynecastle. I mean, looking at Motherwell this season, I think the headlines has been written off the park in terms of that's why Stuart Kettlewell left his job, because as I always keep saying to the guys in the show, it wasn't because Stuart Kettlewell was doing a poor job at Motherwell. I mean, okay, football might not be brilliant at times, but they were still getting results. But it was the headlines off the park. That's why he had to leave. And I suppose Michael Vimmer come in and he basically took it to the. Would you say that he took it to the dirt to water? You would say.
Yeah, but I think with Kettlewell, that situation always confused me a bit. Yes, it's not the nicest football, but I don't think every team can expect to play the best football. Kettlewell was a very good manager. He had Motherwell in a very good place, and he had them in top six, battling for a European spot. So I can understand the Motherwell fans' frustration. Obviously, if you're not playing the nicest stuff and you're grinding out results, it can be frustrating to watch. But if you get results, then that's the key thing. That's what matters in football. And I think Hearts fans, so just to go out of them. On the flip side, they'll need to be patient when a new manager comes in. I know Graham's commented there. If it is to be McInnes or it is to be Robinson and McGlynn, bar John McGlynn, if the other two managers come in, it might not be the nicest football to watch. It'll be far from it, but it can get you results, and that's ultimately what matters in football.
Yeah, by the way, Graham, get back to your work. I don't want to for you to get this act going because you're speaking to you're listening to a couple of no, I wasn't going to say numpties, but I have now. But yeah, I mean, I think it was quite interesting because I don't know if you saw the Kamal press conference yesterday, but Derek McInnes wasn't there. It was his assistant manager, and I think that was because if McInnes was up, all the press conference would have been about him going to Hearts instead of the game tomorrow. However, I never stopped the media asking Paul Sheeran about millions of questions about Derek McInnes as well. And obviously, if you've not seen it, I would advise you to go and watch it because right at the end of the press conference, the PR officer, no more questions about that. So I think Kamal done well there not to bring Derek McInnes into the press conference.
You could look at it. I'd also look at it as if McInnes has not been there. That's drawn more eyes to the situation. If you put McInnes in and McInnes goes, the bog standard response would be, "I'm fully focused on my time at Kilmarnock. I want to finish the season strong, all this and that," which is usually what you would have got if it was McInnes. I think not having him there has probably drawn more eyes to the situation. Or as I said, I think it has put more eyes on maybe him going to Hearts, which like McInnes will know that no matter what's happening, obviously we don't know what's happening, but if it is going to be McInnes at Hearts, he will finish the season strong at Kilmarnock. The last thing he wants to do is let down the Kilmarnock, the football club, because they're not particularly safe. They're still in a fight. So the one thing he want to do is finish the season strong, yes, but if he is going to Hearts, he want to make a good impression getting into the Hearts job as well.
And I think Graham basically said that there's a meeting tomorrow at Hearts tomorrow morning. And I think that if the rumours was right about Derek McInnes, I think we might be on here on Sunday talking about a new Hearts manager.
We could be. I mean, for stuff that I've heard on previous other sources that apparently he might be taking charge of the last two matches. So you're right, we could be on here on Sunday talking about them, starting to speak about the midweek games, going, all right, well, we're going to get to see a Derek McInnes Hearts team finnu, which would be interesting. And I think if he does get the job, it's more that, well, it's well earned. I don't think anybody can say any different. I think he's done really well at Kilmarnock. Yes, this season's not been quite perfect, but one thing I will say is the Hearts fans need to get behind him if it is going to be McInnes, because yes, it's going to take a bit of time. Again, it's not his squad. He needs to get players in. It's probably going to be a big window. They're probably going to lose Shankland. So it's going to be a pretty big summer for McInnes.
Well, then again, if McInnes comes in or any new manager comes in, maybe Shankland will think twice, because obviously there were rumours going about when Klitzy was there, he was getting interviewed and he was kind of smirking at the Player of the Year. So was, late enough, so was Anne Budge as well. But do you think that will change Shankland's mind in any way, or do you think he's still off?
I think he's still off, to be honest with you. That's just my opinion. I don't think he's going to want to stick it on at Hearts anyway. I think he's done well with Hearts. Obviously, this season's not been maybe what last season was, but I think he'll probably fancy a new challenge because, let's be honest, everywhere Shankland's really went outside of Scotland, it's not worked. So maybe he'll fancy himself somewhere else, maybe a trip into England or whatever it might be. But who knows? I mean, McInnes could come in and Shankland could fancy another season under him, but you just never know how it's quite going to work out. I would reckon, in my opinion, and this is a very early shout, obviously, we've got a whole summit to talk about transfers and stuff, but in my opinion, McInnes will look at one of his Kilmarnock players as an option. I think he might look at that. What's his name?
Maybe Danny Amsco.
Well, I think Armstrong would be one. Kyle, I
Kyle
forgot his
McGuinness.
name.
Kyle
Kyle
McGuinness.
McGinn. That would be an interesting shout. Kyle Vassell, that's the one, the striker. I've read a stat ages ago that he had the best goals per minute ratio in the Kilmarnock squad, so I don't know if McInnes will maybe want to look at some of his own players in that sort of sense. Obviously, Armstrong's a big one, as you mentioned.
There you go. Grimm's basically saying on YouTube that he believes it's going to be McInnes and then Shankland will stay. And I suppose if Shankland stays and they get a new manager, and well, that's good news going into the summer.
Yeah, and a front sort of three. I don't know what system McInnes will use with that squad, but if he's going to use wingers, having Armstrong in there and then Shankland in front of him is going to be a pretty deadly partnership going into next season. That's going to be a very exciting Hearts team to watch, not to mention all the good midfielders they've got as well.
There you go. So that's the Hearts and Motherwell game at Tynecastle tomorrow. Let's move on to, fun enough, we were just talking about the Derek McInnes' side against Dundee at home tomorrow. And I'm going to put this down to the derby game between McInnes and Tony Docherty, rocking horns again. Obviously, they were up in Aberdeen together. And then Aberdeen, they both went their separate ways kind of like after that. As I said, Paul Sheeran was doing the media duties yesterday for Kilmarnock. Do you think that we know how like the kind of like football circles work now, Robbie? So do you think Hearts has been tapping up or speaking to Derek McInnes for a couple of weeks now? That's why Kilmarnock's not been the same Kilmarnock as last season, or do you just pick it down to they're having a bad season?
To be honest, I think this has been a pretty poor season. They had a decent start. I remember Europe was going pretty well. I think they made it through the first round of qualifiers, getting knocked out obviously in the second. But there's just seemed to be a mentality issue at Kilmarnock this year, and I think you're right. I think maybe for the last week or two there has been talks between McInnes and Hearts. There's probably no doubt about that. But I just think this is more than the last couple of weeks. I think this is just a whole season thing. Like Dundee, going to speak about them in a minute. I don't think they've been the same as they were last season. To be honest, I don't know if I just put that down to the clubs themselves. I think I maybe put that down to teams like Hibs and Aberdeen that are getting stronger and are progressing forward and higher up the league. I thought we were going to be one of the teams that were going to be down there in the bottom six, where Kilmarnock and Dundee were, mainly because I thought other teams were going to get stronger. Obviously, you've got the Motherwell and Hearts that are in there as well there. I know Hearts have taken a bit of a dip, but they're only going to get better going forward. So, I don't necessarily think an 8th place is a bad season for Kilmarnock by any stretch. If we get 8th place by the end of the season, I'd be perfectly happy with that. I think the issue is the last few weeks and the last few months, they've just not shown much on the pitch. I think it's been very poor display. The crowds have been decreasing at Rugby Park. They've not been showing up in the big European numbers that they were at the start of the season. So I think for Kilmarnock next season will be good because it'll be a fresh start under a new manager. If McInnes is going to go to Hearts under new players, if the likes of Armstrong is going to leave and stuff like that. So it's a new chance for Kilmarnock to bring new players in. I always say it'll get stale at your club eventually. I think Robinson lives by the motto that every 3 years you will need to change a few bodies. So going forward, I think it'll be nice for Kilmarnock fans to get a fresh start.
And I think as well, Robbie, I know that we were talking about Kilmarnock and you touched upon Dundee, but it's interesting how they're both in the bottom six and they're both playing each other tomorrow. Because because last season we were talking on the show about they've been Dundee was a standout team and Kilmarnock's been going along nicely because don't forget they beat Celtic twice. They beat Rangers, and that's right. They beat Celtic in the League Cup and the League, and obviously they beat Rangers at the beginning of the season, and now it's fun how we're a season on, Robbie, and we're just talking about the season's it's kind of like overturned a wee bit.
Yeah, and like again, I don't. Like, I think if you're a Kilmarnock fan, there's obviously, football's not played on paper. I think 8th place are probably disappointed just because the way they've been playing this season, it's not been the same. They've had a player like again, I always bring it up, Calvin Ramsey. They're paying him £4,000 a week and he's sitting on the bench. That's not cheap. But so it's weird decisions like that. That's probably why there's a bit of negativity around Rugby Park right now. But again, they'll be glad there's a fresh start. That get into next season, they'll have the summer to bring in a new manager, get in the players that they want, and try and kick on, because I think next season could be one of the best seasons in quite a while. You're going to have the new managers settled in, having a summer. You're going to have Hearts getting better. Hibs and Aberdeen are going to keep up there. You're going to have Falkirk in the division. Next season could be really, really good for that sort of top 6 mid-table battle. It's going to be a really interesting one.
And from a Selby's point of view, Robbie, you would want Dundee to stay in the league, because obviously you'll be missing that derby in that season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, from a neutral point of view, I don't really mind, but you're right. If a point of view of wanting derbies, then of course, I want Dundee to stay. I think they will. I don't think Dundee will get relegated. I think they have too much an experienced squad. I think they've got too much an experienced manager as well. I think Tony Docherty knows what he's doing, that even if they did end up in playoffs, I think they'd be more than capable to survive. So I don't see Kilmarnock or Dundee going down. I think next season, genuinely, as I said, could be a really, really good one.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Paul Sheehan was talking to the media, as I said yesterday, Robbie, and he says, I think we need another point to get us over the line, because basically he was saying that they're still not safe. But we just need to go out and get the job done. The game we had against Dundee this season has been entertaining. There's been late goals and glamour. So it'll be a tough game at Dundee, a good side. I've just remembered something, Robbie. Was it one of the games this season? Derek McInnes got a yellow card because when the ball was in play, he stepped over the white line, and he got a yellow card for that.
I think so. I think you're right. I mean, managers get yellow cards for some bizarre reasons. Obviously, we had the big one with Barry Ferguson last week getting a yellow card. I like managers like that. I like managers that show passion. It's the same with Robinson at us. There's multiple times where he's getting told by the fourth official, get back in your box, and it just continuously goes out his box. It's something that I like to see. I like a passionate manager. You don't want a manager that's just going to stand there with his horns in the pockets for the full game and no really do anything. And it's not what you're about to see. So for somebody like Tony Docherty or Derek McInnes, it's they're two very passionate guys. They care a lot about the clubs they're at, and if it is to be McInnes' last game for Kilmarnock, then I'm sure, like any other game, he'll go out and he'll tell his boys to get 100%.
Yeah, no, and I suppose for Dundee's point of view, I mean, there's only like 3 games left, and I know Paul Sheehan was saying that if they make, it'd be good for us to get a point to get us over the line. But I think Dundee needs more than a point. You might know better than me, but I think they might need 6 points.
Yeah, pretty much looks that way. I mean, to guarantee St Johnstone go down tomorrow, they'd either need Ross County to win, or pick up 3 points against Kilmarnock to stop them from finishing rock bottom. Obviously, the playoffs still hugely in contention. So, I think they probably need 2 wins left of the season, and based on form, I think they lost the last match. So, it's going to be a good running. I think down that bottom end. The sort of 3 or 4 teams that are still very much in that sort of playoff relegation battle. So it'll be interesting. But as I said, I think Tony Docherty's got more than enough. I think he's more than experienced enough. He's got a good squad that have got some very good experienced heads. that will keep them up. Interestingly, in Kilmarnock, I think I was reading something the other day that they've got the best home form in terms of being able to make it hard for teams. You know, the team that can score the most against teams at home. And I suppose when you're on that plastic pitch tomorrow, and what I presume will probably be boiling, it's going to be a tough shift for the Dundee players to go away there and try and get the points. So it will be an interesting game.
I know that we're used to the hot weather here in Scotland. We can beat most countries for the hot weather and all that as well. But in terms of the pitch, it's a terrible surface at Rugby Park as well. But I mean, I don't think they'll water the park. I don't think they'll water the park, Robbie, tomorrow.
Probably not, and I think that's probably down to a bit of
advantage.
I don't want to say mind games, but yeah, you know what I'm getting at. You know, they want it to be as sticky and as horrible and as hard to play on as possible, because if you look at a park like Livingston, you know, Martindale loves it when the pitch is wet because it makes it harder for teams. The difference between that pitch and Rugby Park is I think McInnes likes it when it's, you know, it's not wet and it's quite sticky and it's hard to play on, because teams coming away aren't used to that. Then obviously you've got next season we'll have Falkirk's pitch, which I've got to say, looking at it, you wouldn't even think it was plastic. That's how nice it is. But you know, there's all different types of plastic pitches, but it comes back to that point, and like we just want them out the division. You know, you don't want a Premiership full of plastic pitches. So I know Kilmarnock are building towards that at some point, but I think we will need to put up for it for a wee bit longer.
The Air United's are plastic surface as well, is that right?
I think so. Aye.
And I think Air United is one of the better ones as well. Like Air United and Airlie has got one, but I mean, if you didn't know that they had a plastic surface, you would be, you know, if some guy actually told you that they were Askecuff Parks, it's one of these ones where you would say, well, are they? Because when you're watching the telly, it's like, oh, right, okay, that's because a brilliant park. But compare that to Livingston's, where, as I say, the old joke is when somebody takes a cigarette and just burns it right down the park, as well, and then obviously Rugby Park as well. But I think it's not getting ripped up next season. I think in next season
it should be. I think that's the plans for the end of next season, which is obviously a step into having no plastic pitches left. I mean, you know, it only takes one look at leagues around us. You know, you go into our old rivals in England. The top 4 leagues barely have any plastic pitches, never mind the top 2. So it'll be a nice change to have. Saying that, like, obviously you don't want them in the top 2. If it can be done right and it can be held to a good standard, it doesn't bother me as much. If Falkirk are going to come into the division, for example, next season and keep a good standard of plastic pitch, and it, you know, looks like it did in that game on Friday, then I don't mind it, because I've seen some of the grass pitches in the way they hand up in the Premiership. You know, Dundee's a perfect example while we're on the topic. Some of the, you know, when it's horrendous weather, some of the conditions that Dens Park's left in is horrible. And, you know, they've had to postpone multiple games. So if a plastic pitch can be done in a good way, then I don't mind it for now. But obviously at some point you do want to see every sort of pitches grass, at some point.
And I know that we're not here to talk about my favourite subject, the TV deal, but I mean, you know, if you're watching a game on TV, especially at Livingston, it doesn't look very good for the game in Scotland when you see that park.
Aye, and you know, not to go into too much of a side rant, but Ayr have possibly got not only. I think the plastic pitch is alright, but see in terms of where they place the cameras when the games are on the TV, and I think you'll see it tonight, the lower sort of angle just does not work. I'd really love if Ayr were going to come up next season for that to be changed in a sort of higher sense, because I think it's one of the worst games to watch, one of the worst places to watch a game of football if you're not actually there. You know, if you're watching on the TV, it's quite a nuisance. So I agree. I think when you're watching the likes of Livingston on the TV, you know, there's multiple factors at play in a club like Livingston. It's not just the plastic pitch, you know, it is the fan base and all that sort of stuff. Like obviously that doesn't help. So I agree. Livingston's one of the weirdest ones to watch a game of football.
Yeah, no, because I think United, what the stand is kind of like, it's not kind of like high up basically, and that's why you've got the cameras and stuff. But yeah, so that game's coming up at 8:15 tonight. We'll speak about that later on in the show. Let's move on now to the last game in the bottom six, and I was saying to you before we came on, Robbie, this game should have been on the TV because I think like if St Johnstone doesn't win tomorrow, they were down. But even if they weren't, I still think this game would have been a decent game to watch at McDermott Park, St Johnstone against Ross County.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of people would. Like, I don't think it's going to be the most blockbuster game of football, and I don't think it's going to be spectacular and all that. But it's no, it's no all about that. We want to see the relegation scraps. St Johnstone have it in them. By this time on Sunday, we might not hear from Alistair again if St Johnstone get relegated if they lose. So, it's all wee things like that. It's something that we want to see, and obviously somebody probably knows better than me about the TV deal and why Viaplay only shown another game this season, but obviously in the league. So it is a bit of a shame that we've got no bottom six games on the TV after the split, because there is some interesting battles going on. But in terms of this game, sorry to say if Alistair's watching, but I think the time is pretty much over. I think Ross County will go there, and I think they will get a result, which inevitably seals their fate, which is a shame because I like Valakari and I just like having St Johnstone in the league. They're another team that, it's not a plastic surface, although it's not the nicest place to go to. I never mind St Johnstone, and they're playing some nice stuff as well these days. So it's something that is going to be a shame to see them go, but I reckon they'll be back next year.
I think if Alistair was on the show, Robbie, he would say we are down as well, because he basically admitted that to us the other night as well. I'm starting to lose faith now, Robbie, because St Johnstone at the beginning of the season, everybody went for Ross County to go down, and I went for St Johnstone to stay up. But obviously that's coming to bite me now.
Yeah, well, I mean, this time last week on the show we had Alistair on, and I said I still had hope for St Johnstone. I said it wasn't entirely done. Was that me just holding a bit of sense for false hope? Maybe, because we're a week on and I've got to say it's more than likely over now, and I'm sure Alistair would even admit that if he was here as well. I think they've gave it a good go. They could have been in a much worse position by now if they didn't obviously sack the former manager and bring Valakari in. I think they could have been down a long time ago. But I think, strangely enough, you never want your team to get relegated, but there's positives St Johnstone can take. This is going to be a team that's going into the Championship. Yes, they're going to recruit some players, but they've got a manager that's got a good system. They've got a manager that's going to play some nice stuff, and I think, not to get too much on early prediction again, but I think St Johnstone will probably more than likely come straight back up next season. So, there's some positives to take. I think they've got a good manager. Hopefully they don't sack him. That's possibly worst case scenario. They go down and then they sack him, which I hope doesn't happen. But it's obviously a shame when you're losing a team, but I think they'll be fine.
I think you're right, Robbie. I think this is a bit weird for me to say this, but I think Valak has done not a bad job since he's come in terms of we were talking about maybe December time to say St Johnstone were down, but I mean I remember that game against Motherwell in the Scottish Cup, and after that, they went on a bit of a run. And don't forget, a few weeks ago, they went to Celtic Park, Solgate, McDermott Park, and St Johnstone beat them 1-0. So, I mean, they have been on a good run. Maybe what you would maybe say to that is maybe it's a bit late.
Yeah, I think so. And look, that's not Valakari's fault. He's only... worked with what you thought since he came in on that impressive run. They came to Paisley twice. I know we beat them once, but I don't even think we deserved that one, and then they beat us 1-0. So, being able to watch it, Johnstone, they're good at scraping out results. They've done it twice against Motherwell, and they got them in the league. But I think that was only in a matter of days. St Johnstone picked up 2 results against them. So, this team can pick up results. It's just a shame that Valakari wasn't in for the beginning, or I personally think things would be different right now. I don't think they would be done there. Obviously, Ross County going out to McDermott tomorrow. It'll be a tough game. But look, Ross County are such a weird team. I keep bringing it back to a few weeks ago. We were on the show and I was touting them for top 6. An outside shout. They were up there. They were battling. Now it's just completely went the other way. And honestly, if it was any closer between Ross County and St Johnstone, I think I'd probably be leaning towards Ross County maybe getting in a relegation battle, because again, them and St Johnstone are the only 2 teams to lose the last 2 matches, so it's not gone well for either team. And I think when it came to McDermott Park, it would be more suited towards St Johnstone. Unfortunately, obviously for St Johnstone, the point gap's quite big, and they're probably not going to be able to pull it back. But you never know. I mean, if they win tomorrow and Ross County start losing and they can win the rest of their games, then you just never know in this league.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's going to be quite interesting to see. I think if there was a team maybe could get out of jail and to escape this season, it's been Ross County, because they've been in this situation for many years. Good look at last year in the final against who was they playing in the final? Rafe Roberts over the 2 legs.
Yeah, I think so. I think they played, was it no Rafe in the semis, and then they played Partick, was it no Partick again in the final?
No, that was 2 years ago. They played Packet first in the final. Remember that game for, or maybe it was that. No, I'm sure it was Rafe last season, Robbie, and they played Packet Thistle the year before. And Packet Thistle should have won the playoff game in the first leg, because I don't know if you remember that one, but Thistle should have won that 3 or 4-0 in the first game.
Yeah, I think Thistle were quite good in the first leg as well. I think they could have been a few more goals up. You're right, it was Rafe Rovers. They beat them 2-1 away and then beat them 4-0 at home. But I was, funnily enough, I was listening to Gordon Duncan, and he made a sort of a rule, and I want to see how you feel about this. I think if a team finishes in the playoffs 3 times in a row, like Ross County are probably going to do this season, you should just send them straight in, because that's 3 times they've been in the 11th place. Again, obviously the playoffs in there for a reason, but if you finish 11th 3 times in a row, you should just be going. And I actually quite like that idea.
Yeah, it's quite weird, but we like to do weird things in Scottish football at times. But yeah, I think it would make it more exciting as well. I know, like we always say the bottom 6 is very exciting, but I think that would make it more exciting, especially before you get to the kind of like bottom 6 as well. So yeah, I think so as well, because it puts a fan through kind of misery that they wouldn't want to go through every season.
Yeah, Ross County fans must be sick of the playoffs at this point, and I think sadly for them, this is a playoffs now where I genuinely look at any of the teams in the Championship and I go, they could give Ross County a game. I think I genuinely believe that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they get on. I think, just to go back to Johnson quickly on Graham's comment about Mackenzie Cook, that's a really interesting point. All they really do have is Mackenzie Cook, and when he leaves, well, I don't know if he's under contract actually at St Johnstone getting into next year. I can't remember if it's just a loan or no. So whether they have him or no in the Championship is going to be a big deciding factor, because they're going to need to find somebody that's going to score goals. It's all right relying on Graham Carey to pop up with a wonder strike every now and again, but he's not going to be able to do it consistently. So it will be an interesting one.
Yeah, no, yep, and I think as well that yeah, you've actually got me thinking about that point now, Robbie, that you make that. I think Yeah, why not try it out for one season and see what happens?
No, I don't think there could be any harm in it, to be honest with you. Obviously, the playoffs are in place for a reason, but it would be cool to see, you know, that as a thing. If a team is that poor 3 seasons in a row to finish in the playoffs, then just bring them down and pull up the second place team in the championship. It could work. But, you know, getting back to Graham's point on Mackenzie Kirk, I think, you know, although a problem is the amount of, you know, the lack of goals they're scoring, the problem's the amount they're conceding as well. You know, I remember Alistair was on the show months ago going, well, our defence is a shambles. You know, we need to get bodies in, we need to bring in defenders because it's no great, and they still leak a lot of goals. So I suspect there probably will be goals in this match tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be a 1-0 win. I think both teams will get each other. And I still don't think it'll be an entertaining game, but I think there will be goals in that match.
I don't think when you come to this gigs in the season, Robert, I don't think you're expecting to see kind of like entertainment game in terms of tomorrow's game. But like I know we use the old phrase in football, "Oh, this is a 6-pointer this game," but I would go as far as to say this is a 9-pointer game.
I mean, this is season defining. This is it. So Johnstone have only got limited amount of time left before they're relegated, so they need to go out and give everything they've got. Obviously, no, I don't expect quick games. I don't expect a Barcelona Inter versus PSG type of game. You know, it's not what I expect to see, but it should be better than what the first leg of the playoffs provided in each of the games. So,
I just woke up, Robbie.
I know, I don't even know what the score was after the first leg. I fell asleep that fast, but I think games should be better than that, and I think they will be. You know, obviously you're going to speak about with Dave some of the top 6 games. I think, you know, some of the games should be open and free and fast flowing. You know, you look at Celtic Hibs in particular, that should be a game, but St Johnstone and Ross County are 2 teams that aren't about to do that. You know, they can only go with what they've got, and they've not got players that are capable of putting on a show. So it'll be a tight game, and I still think there will be goals.
Rob is watching us on Facebook, and he says, "What do you think of Hibs?" Well, we'll come on to talk about Hibs in a minute when we talk about the top 6 as well. But get your comments coming in, guys, on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Instagram tonight as well. We're live until 7 o'clock as well. Don't forget, we'll be live on Sunday after the games, including the game at Ibrox between Rangers and Aberdeen, and also we're live next Wednesday night for the last round of midweek fixtures before the end of the season, and then we'll have one game to go, and then I don't know what me and Robbie will be doing on the Friday night, probably taking up bingo somewhere or something for the next 3 weeks, but believe you me, we'll be back as soon as you could say vinegar of Heatherlink. I mean, what do you make of Don Cowie, obviously second spell back at Ross County? Robert?
I really like him. I think he's a likeable guy. He's almost like Robinson in a way. I think the way he speaks is very professional. You know, he's down to earth. He's very honest. You know, I was listening to his press conference after I think Ross County lost last week, and you know, he was very open, saying the boys are feeling low in confidence right now, which it's a very, I don't know what the word would be. It's something that you wouldn't imagine a manager admitting in a press conference. You know, that these players are feeling so low, but he is honest enough to say that, and I think he'll probably be disappointed that they've no secured safety at this point. You know, for the position that they were in. I sort of thought, right, a couple more wins will get them safety, but they've just not really found a way through. And look, I don't like calling teams one-man teams or this or that, but if Ronan Hale's no hitting heights and no scoring the goals that he was early in the season, you know, I remember there was I think a streak of 5 or 6 games where he was scoring constantly. If he's not hitting that height, I don't think Ross County are scoring as much goals, which is obviously a bit disappointing for them. But I think in these last few matches where it matters, I do think Ross County will secure enough points not to go automatically. Then, again, we go back to St Johnstone. I think they will be confirmed relegated this weekend, if not during midweek. But But my worry is they go into the playoffs now. Can they take on a Partick Thistle and a United where it's going to be more attacking? Partick Thistle now aren't going to be scared of Ross County to go at them. I like Livingston. They've had a good season attacking wise. They've been able to go and play with freedom. So all these teams are going to be pretty confident in coming up against a Ross County team that, again, this isn't my words, Don Cowie's admitted that they're pretty low in confidence.
Yeah, no, exactly it as well. So that's the bottom 6 games tomorrow. The top 6 games, obviously, we'll talk about Hibs Celtic in a minute, Rob, in the comments there. But before we let Robbie go tonight, let's speak about the game at Talladice, and it's the Jim Goodwin derby, as I like to call it, Robbie. But you don't. You call it something else. And it's not a derby, it's something else. What do you think of this game? I was listening to Stephen Robertson again. You've got about 2 or 3 players out tomorrow, including your captain, Mark O'Hara.
Yeah, for what Robinson said, Mark's going to go out. And look, not to call Robinson a liar, but he's done this a few times where he said, X, Y, and Z is going to be missing for the game, and then they're actually back and they're in the starting lineup. So I'm not going to count Mark out just yet, but if he is out, that's obviously a very big miss. Luckily for us, we've got the players that can step in and play in his position. I think, although he is going to be a key miss and we would be, downsizing tools, it's not the worst thing in the world to lose him. So I think it will be a big miss. I know Ali Bioso is apparently missing as well, which maybe takes away that attacking threat. I think he has been so good. I did go to McDonald's with John Goodwin during the week. I gave him a wee bit of a message.
Happy meal.
I gave him the Toyota my Happy Meal just to try and convince him to let us win at the weekend. But it'll be an interesting game. Dundee, we've not managed to score into them this season. That's maybe the biggest thing getting into this game, in such a time where, Stephen Robinson said if we get Europe again, he'll build the players' statues, and I'll probably help him, to be honest with you, because if we can overcome this Dundee United team, which we've not been able to do all season, then take on Hibs and then somehow pull off a miracle result at Celtic, it'll be well earned, especially with the injury problems that Robinson's coming out and saying that we've got. So it's going to be a very interesting game tomorrow. If anybody is watching this, and I will just say quickly, if anybody is going in their way end, please wear a white shirt. I know St Mirren have been posting about it all week. They want to create a nice display. So if anybody's got a white shirt, it doesn't need to be St Mirren themed, just anything white, please wear it because it'll look really, really nice. And we need all the support we can get behind the players. I remember I went to Tannadice on my birthday and we lost 2-0, so let's hope that doesn't happen again.
Have you do you know if Mirren's taking a big support tomorrow?
I believe we've sold out our initial allocation. I think there was only about 6 tickets left the other day, so I think they are going to open up more. So it's going to be a bumper crowd down at Tannadice tomorrow.
Yeah, no, and after Dundee, like, you know, it pains you to say that, Robbie, but I mean they've had a good season, and I'm actually quite surprised of Jim Goodwin. Well, you're not surprised at all, Robbie, but I'm surprised that he wasn't in the running for the manager of the year.
Yeah, I think Robinson said that as well, and I agree. As much as I'll come on the show and take my wee digs at Goodwin, I cannot believe he wasn't nominated for manager of the year. He's done a superb job. They're coming, the team that came up for the championship. There was a lot of people that touted them to go down, get relegated again. I was one, in my opinion, in my predictions that I put top 6. I did believe that they were strong enough and had a good enough squad to come straight back in and go flying, which they have done. But to not even nominate him for manager of the years, to be honest, it confused me a wee bit at the time. When obviously I heard the nominations, I know Robinson's a humble guy. I'd argue he probably should have been nominated as well for manager of the year. So it swings and roundabouts. But Jim Goodwin's done a fantastic job with Dundee United. He's built a good squad. They've got some good players. Obviously, at the weekend, the big one's going to be Sam Dalby, and he hit the heights because if they beat us, it completely knocks us out of this top 5 race. So it's going to be an interesting game. I don't expect, again, many goals. I think the last 3 games have been 2-0, 1-0 and 1-0 Dundee United. So it'll be a close game. Hopefully we can actually score this time though.
Yeah, So basically, your manager was talking today, Robbie, about the game tomorrow, and he said that I know we are not I know that we're not going to get it easy up there. We've not got a good record, but we are going there to get all 3 points. But it won't be easy. I'm looking forward to the game. So do you think that? I know this is a bit stupid from me to say that because there's only a few games left, but do you think that you're going to get the first win up there this season?
Well, I think if there's any chance of Europe, we need to. But the story of this season, the story of the season's been belief. The belief in the players that we can do anything. We've been to Ibrox, we've picked up wins, we've gave Celtic the running for 90 minutes. But obviously we lost the game, but we've went toe to toe with the best teams in the world. Well, not in the world, sorry, we've not went quite toe to toe with Real Madrid yet. But we've went toe to toe with the likes of Aberdeen, that we've beaten basically every time we've played them this season. We're the only team that have still no lost to Hibs this season. The story of this season genuinely has been belief. It's that we can achieve anything if the players give 110%, and going up there on tomorrow with a bumper crowd, the players need to give everything they've got again. If we leave everything on the pitch, and even if it does end up being a negative result for us and we are out of the European races, so be it. If we give all we've got, then I'm more than happy with a season that we've had, because we could be in the situation right now where I'm on the show and we're talking about St Mirren versus Kilmarnock tomorrow at Rugby Park or wherever it might be, and we might be in a relegation battle. That's what we could be talking about, but we're not. We're talking about yet another successful top six season where, let's be honest, we probably should be building Robinson a statue, or the players, because he's had just such a superb season again, and it's mainly down to him and the players.
There we go. I always like banter on the show, Robbie. Peter on Facebook says, "Come on, should be the manager of the year." Yeah. So, as for Dundee United, Jim Goodwin says that there are always big games at this stage of the season. We want to get back to winning ways, and that's the thing, Robbie. I mean, Dundee United has been a breath of fresh air to the Premiership. I always like to see Dundee United in the top league. Jim Goodwin has been doing well this season, but it's weird because they've done enough to get into the top six. Yet the last two games they've been a bit disappointing.
And I think some of Dundee United fans, and I know it's happened to some of our fans and other clubs, I think they're maybe overreacting a wee bit. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff online for some of the Dundee United supporters, but some of them are still not confident on Jim Goodwin in the job, which absolutely confuses me. And they look, if Dundee United somehow bottle this and finish below us and we get into Europe and they don't, you can be as angry as you want, and I get it. To blow it for that position wouldn't have been nice, and I know they have a tough running past us. I know they've got Rangers and Aberdeen, so it's not exactly the easiest running, but I'd still be really, really happy with a top six season if I'm a Dundee United fan, and I know the opportunity of Europe would even be bigger, and I think Jim Goodwin called it the icing on the cake. But even if they don't, I cannot believe there's some United fans that still don't fancy Jim Goodwin in the job. To me, he's came in with a squad that he's built over the Championship season. He's managed to get himself into top five for so long, and yes, I know it would be heartbreak if they blew it, but it would still be a very, very good season.
Yeah, football fans are very fickle sometimes. It's a bit like when if Brendan Rodgers or whoever at Rangers are going to win the European Cup, maybe that's never going to happen, right? It's just a fantasy, pipe dreaming. That would be good for Scottish football. But then you would get some supporters coming out and say they're still not happy. So what else do they need to do?
My God, tell me about it. I mean, I've watched St Mirren for 3 years finishing the top six, and there's still people that don't like Robinson. So, I mean, that tells you all you need to know. Dundee United fans should be happy with this first season back. They could have been in a relegation scrap. They've had some pretty big wins this year. I know they've had some pretty bad losses as well. But that comes hand in hand with playing in this league. You're going to need to take the good with the bad. Next season, they can keep improving. If they can get Sam Dalby back, absolutely brilliant for them. If not, then I'm sure Goodwin's more than capable of going to find somebody else to come in. And genuinely, I could see that side battling for Europe again next season. I think Dundee United are one of the biggest clubs in this country, and look, as much as I come on the show and have wee jokes about Goodwin, he's genuinely a good manager. I believe he is one of the better ones in this country. At our time he was a bit young and inexperienced when he went to Aberdeen. But the way he composed himself with Dundee United and the way he can graft at results has been nothing short of fantastic.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think of the budgets as well, Robbie, I keep going on about the budgets and people might get annoyed at me, especially you and all the St Mirren fans. But I mean, if you think of the budget that he's got every season, he always pulls it off.
Yeah, and that's what good managers seem to be able to do. Robinson's working with one of the worst budgets in the league, and he's still finding himself in the top six. Goodwin, albeit Dundee United, I think, have a much bigger budget than the likes of we do, and I think they've got quite a big budget compared to the rest of the bottom six, maybe by Hearts. So I know they're working with a bigger budget, but the way they're making it work and the players that they're bringing in, they're bringing high caliber players on loan for the likes of Liverpool. I know Lucas Stevenson's been one of my personal favourites this year. He's really made an impact. I doubt we'll see him back up here, but I'd love to see him permanently at a team. So that Jim Goodwin is more than capable of pushing this team to Europe. If it doesn't happen this season, I'm sure it could happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just a wee quick word on St Mirren then. Yeah, I mean, thumbs up on St Mirren. A successful season, Robbie.
Very successful season. To be honest, I couldn't be happier. It's going to be good. Obviously, I'm not Tannadice tomorrow, but it's going to be good going along to the Smizer on Wednesday to play Hibs. Obviously, depending on how tomorrow's results goes, it could be an even bigger game than it's already looking. So it's just such a feel-good factor. I don't want to keep echoing everything that I've said the past few weeks, but it is so nice to be stress-free and no worry about relegation. And we're fully focused on next season. We've got players that are under contract. Unfortunately, I think more news is coming out that Boyd Muntz is going to be gone at the end of the season, which is obviously a bit of a gut punch. I would have liked to see him stay, but I trust Robinson. I trust the board that will go out and sign somebody that's got even more potential than Boyd Muntz. It's just, honestly, I couldn't sum it up any better. As it's such a good feel good factor. The boys the work that everybody's done, and I got interviewed last week on Time Being St Mirren Fan. I said it then. The work that's been into even just as much as the commentary team, the Misery Hunter boys, the St Mirren Fan podcast, just allowing the fans to be able to do something like that and go and be commentators for all the home games this season. It's magnificent. It just shows how far we've come. With a fan-owned club. Somebody put a picture on yesterday, a game we played against TNS in the Iron Brew Cup, and I think there was maybe a 1,500 attendance. To go for that to playing in top six and averaging 7,000 per match day, it's absolutely superb, and it's credit to not just Robinson but all the players as well.
Do you think as well that just talking about a fan ownership club, and I know Hearts is one as well, do you think that that's a future for football clubs now?
I think it should be. I think every club in the country should be fan owned. I think every club in the world should be in some capacity. I know Hearts do it quite well. Obviously, I'm going to be a bit more biased towards us and say we're probably the perfect representation of the way it can go if it goes right. I think we've got a club that is very open and honest with us now, on the big decisions. They don't hide away things for us. And, the things that they hide away for good reasons. So it's pretty much the best time of being a St Mirren fan I can remember. And I think speaking to my dad, who's been following St Mirren for, I couldn't even tell you how many years, even he said this is probably the best it's ever been. So that just tells you how good it has actually been following us this season. Hopefully again next season we can keep going, keep progressing, and try and get Europe once more, because the one thing I will say is I don't want to take a turn like St Johnstone. I don't want to be relegated in the distant future. That's the last thing I want, and it can easily go that way. So I'm enjoying the top six and the good moments for now, because I know it doesn't last forever. I know it will not last forever, and hopefully Robinson lasts forever, but I don't see it. I just think when a new manager undoubtedly comes in at some point, I hope he's the right appointment. I hope we don't just go out and bring anybody in. I hope we are progressing right, and I think for next season, I hope the same again. I hope we get Europe. I don't know if Michael's here right now. Oh no, he's away for 2 minutes right there, that's fine. I'll speak a wee bit more about St Mirren, because why no. In terms of the game tomorrow, obviously the danger men are going to be Mandro and the Younger. I think that goes without saying. They are probably our biggest threats now that Olasanya's gone. I think anything that we get up the pitch, we'll need to go through them first before we can get a goal. Saying that, with Dundee United's sort of big defence in the day, they have a very big defence. We will need these two to combat, and I think they would have started even if Olasanya was here. Obviously, the midfield battle's going to be interesting as well. Boyd Muntz, O'Hara, obviously missing Phillips. You need these guys like Phillips and Boyd Muntz to come in, step in, and be the big game players in the big moments. We're going to need to be dominant in midfield, no be scared, and I think that's what somebody like Phillips gives you. He's not a scared player, can run for a bit of off of you. So that's enough rambling for me. I'm going to go 2-1 St Mirren tomorrow. And here's my substitution.
There you go, thanks, Robbie, and we'll speak to you soon. And okay, see you on Sunday.
I see you on Sunday. Bye-bye.
There we go. That's the man from the Dawn side is on. Dave, how are you?
Good. Apologies to the viewers for being late. It's just I did have a wee bit of a beard growing, and the beard that I did have growing was not broadcast standard. So before I came on, I did make sure I did shave this off. So now you can see I'm nice and clean.
Right, okay, yeah. And I only thought you were shaving for me, but there you go. You've let the cat out the bag, Dave. It was for people was watching. So yeah. So I don't get offended very easy, but I'm offended at that comment actually. Let's move on to the other game in the top six before we get to the your team game on Sunday against Aberdeen and Rangers. Celtic and Hibs. Dave, tomorrow, 3:00. What do you make of this game?
I think it's shaping up to be a good game. This one, I think Celtic, they'll have one eye in the cup final in mind, but I think at the same time as well, I think Celtic will get this game tomorrow and look to end the season on a high. I think it was a bit underwhelming in terms of how it was an underwhelming contest first and foremost, but I think Celtic will be the first to admit themselves that they were quite underwhelming in the way that they played. So I think they'll look to approach this game tomorrow, get back to winning ways, try and get a bit of momentum before the cup final. I can see Brendan Rodgers making several changes, not completely ripping up the scrapbook and going again. I can see making 2 or 3 changes, maybe for either game time or maybe for just trying out 1 or 2 things before that showpiece event on the 25th of May. As for Hibs, obviously they've had a great season. Obviously they got back to winning ways with a 3-1 defeat to 3-1 win, pardon me, over Dundee United. Hibs shouldn't be defined on Celtic and Rangers, but I think irrespective, Michael, I think for Hibs, they'll look at tomorrow as an opportunity to create a huge statement. They've got one incentive in mind, and that's European football. I think they can go a long, long way to achieving that. And as much as I think Celtic will win this game tomorrow, Hibs have been very competitive against the Glasgow sides this term. I mean, they've had a few big results against Rangers, and whenever they've played Celtic, they've been highly competitive. So this is not a walk in the park for Celtic by any means, and I think it'll be interesting to see how David Gray approaches this one. David Gray is renowned this season as being the type of charismatic man that will go out to Glasgow, not be afraid, will have a go, and I think it's refreshing to see.
I don't know if you know this, Dave, but I heard today that David Gray is one of the nominations for the writers' manager of the year.
Yeah, well, he was obviously nominated for the PFA award as well, and it's great because what a job he's done. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at the job David Gray's done, and I think it's refreshing. I think it's a sign that we need more young managers in Scottish football now. I heard a manager speaking on another podcast recently about managerial cycles and about how younger guys are coming in, and then older guys are going to come back in several years down the line. I understand where this manager's coming from, but at the same time as well, I think it's refreshing to see younger managers coming in. I mean, scoring the championship, and well, I know Brendan Rodgers is a bit older now, but you'll get some of the younger managers that are in Scottish football now. They've all achieved relevant success one way or another throughout the 4 weeks in the last few seasons, and I think that's refreshing to see. And I think for David Gray, they've played an exciting style of football. I think they've played on the front foot. Next season will be interesting, but that's a conversation for another day, Michael. I think for Hibs, I think it's an opportunity for them to see what they're about between now and the end of the season. But for David Gray, I'll admit to being an Aberdeen fan myself, that free draw where I think was it Rocky Bashiri. I think it was Rocky Bashiri obviously scored the equaliser to make it 3-3 and the dying embers and that cold Tuesday night in Easter Road. And since then, it's been a pinnacle and it's been the catalyst for Hibs just going on and doing what they've had to do. It's not as though they've really just had a couple of fluke 1-0 wins or fluke draws, or it's not been like they've had to. It's not like they've played cat and mouse and just got away with things, Michael. They've actually played with a style. They've played with an identity. They've played with a cohesion. And I think that's been an important aspect to raise here and emphasise, because sometimes teams that finish in third, finish in fourth can do well, maybe win 1 or 2-0s, but they don't have a style about them. Hibs have everything that you would epitomise about a decent football team, and what may continue for David Gray's side.
Of course, the Scottish Sun has reported this today, Dave, but how crucial would it be for Hibs to extend Martin Boyle's contract at Easter Road?
I think it would be crucial, yes, but I'll caveat that point of view as well, Michael, by saying that Hibs maybe, I'm not saying they have to, I'm saying maybe have to move on from Martin Boyle. I think maybe you have to look at that. I know it's going to be a controversial opinion amongst certain sections of Hibs fans, but maybe Hibs need to look forward rather than backwards. You've seen David Gray and what he's done in terms of his recruitment, and I think Martin Boyle leaving the club would not be the end of the world for Hibs. It would have been the end of the world for Hibs maybe 2 or 3 years ago, because we're maybe so dependent on his goals a couple of years ago, but I don't think they're dependent on it now. They've obviously had players that have chipped in, not just Boyle and Maynard, all over the park. Obviously, Trantis is in contention for, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's Young Player of the Year in the Writers' Awards, so that just tells you how good a season he's been having. Obviously, defenders have been scoring goals. Rocky Bashiri has been in several Team of the Years and several awards for both his own club and also externally within the Scottish game that are official awards as well. So that's obviously been pleasing for Rocky Bashiri as well. And yeah, I'll be honest, see from the outside looking in, being Scottish football fans or Scottish football pundits in general, Michael, they're saying a lot in inverted commas, thankfully, we're broadcast. Thankfully, pardon me, they're saying a lot of nobodies, or you feel like they're nobodies. But they've came into Hibs, Michael, and they've made it. They've made it like they've been there for about 3, 4, 5 years. So hats off to them. They've been going in the right direction, and I think for Martin Boyle, interesting, because obviously his family's settled in the area. His wife, pardon me, is obviously playing for Hibernian Ladies, albeit she's had a few nasty injuries and a few, obviously she's also been pregnant twice as well. But yeah, I think I'm interested to see what approach Hibs, pardon me, Martin Boyle goes down, because obviously he went to Saudi Arabia before. Estimated region of 5-figure fee a week in terms of wages. So, but just to see if that comes to anything. And what I would say is, from a financial point of view, I actually think it would be a benefit to all parties if Martin Boyle's to move on, because it would very much loosen up the wage bill. And yeah, you're obviously clamoring and you're shaking your head, going, right, okay, who are we going to get like for like replacement? But at the same time, if you look at the job, I know Marky Mackay is not everybody's cup of tea in Scottish football. This is going to be an unpopular opinion, this, but I think the job that Marky Mackay's done alongside David Gray deserves to get a wee bit of acknowledgement. I know it's not going to go down well. I don't mind people battling my head because of this, but what they've done in terms of changing the landscape of the recruitment strategy, changing the whole whole perception of the club deserves to be acknowledged. And I know I'm going in a different uh, conversation to Martin Boyle here, but when you look at Boyle, my point is, and I'll emphasise it, it's not paddock stations now when it would have been maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
So David Gray was speaking to Hibs TV about the game, Dave, and he says it will be a very difficult game, but we're going there to win and pick up the 3 points. And that's what I like about watching Hibs, Dave, because when they come to Parkhead or Ibrox, they don't sit behind the ball, they come and have a go.
I think they've got the players to do it, and that's the refreshing thing. I mean, Dwight Gill's been obviously a big player. I know a certain manager in English football was bemoaning him for what he did at a certain Premier League club, but I think Dwight Gill's been a bit of breath of fresh air. Jantis, as I alluded to, Boyle has been decent. Dylan Levitt's been coming on a game recently for Hibs as well. He obviously scored a big goal at Ibrox not too long ago, so that's obviously been very refreshing from him. But if you look across the team, Michael, they've got quality over the pitch. I've not mentioned, now correct me if I'm wrong, and good luck saying this after a few beers, but Kucheravic, I think that's how you pronounce it.
I think so.
He obviously scored a second goal against Dundee United last week, so they've got quality over the pitch. And Kucheravic isn't exactly one of these players that has a popular name or anything along those lines, but they have a lot of quality. Even if you look at the bench, they've got no, it's not Lennon Miller. It's Lewis Miller. They've got Lewis Miller, Nicky Cannon. They've got the boy Kieran Bowie, who's obviously on loan from Fulham, who's been doing really, really well. Josh Campbell, he started the season well, but been a bit meh recently. Dwight Gales, I mentioned. Manny, they've also got obviously players like Boyle, Hoylett obviously Aberdeen, and Hoylett's had a much better season this season than he did in the several months that he was at Aberdeen as well. So obviously got Chris Harden and him to play a 3-4-3 formation that suits them to an absolute T. From a manager's point of view, sometimes that's the hardest formation for a manager to go and work on. But tomorrow, there'll be a lot of times they might change the formation tomorrow. There'll be a lot of times when they won't have the ball, but at the same time, when they do have the ball, they will be ready to go and isolate Celtic. They will be ready to go and take advantage. They will be ready to go and have a right good goal and shock the 60,000 or so that will be at Celtic Park tomorrow.
And that's for Celtic. This is the first game at home, Dave, since they became champions again. And I think like the worst kept secret will Hibs do a guard of honour for Celtic tomorrow. I think they will do it tomorrow. I think the only reason why they never done it last week was because it was Rangers and Ibrox and all that. So what are you expecting for Celtic to do? Because even though the league's over, they still want to go out and win the game, but they've got a cup final against Aberdeen in a few weeks as well.
Absolutely. On the guard of honour point of view, it was never going to happen last week. Let's be brutally honest on that front. I think Hibs are more of a complimentary club, if that's the right word to use. I'll be honest, I'm expecting Aberdeen to maybe do the same thing on Wednesday, but obviously Celtic got to Pittodrie on Wednesday as well. Albeit I know, obviously, that will be a bit of a dress rehearsal for the cup final coming up, but I think irrespective as well, I think, I think both Hibs and Aberdeen and subsequently St Mirren when they play next week, I think they'll be more complimentary in the guard of honour. But as for Celtic tomorrow, I think there'll be changes, as I said to you earlier on in the show. I think Brendan Rodgers will look to freshen the squad out. I think there's an opportunity for. I think the next few games, I don't know if you agree, being a Celtic fan, Michael. I think the next few games will give Celtic an idea. Well, the next 3 games, pardon me. I think the next 3 games will give everybody an opportunity to see who's on the bus and who's off the bus for Celtic next season. I think it's an opportunity to see, depending on the lineup, it's an opportunity to see who's maybe playing, or if there's players that might be on their way out. I do think Celtic need to freshen the squad for next season. The goalie wise, I think the whole Kasper Schmeichel situation's going to be interesting. Will he continue another season? I know he's injured at this precise moment in time. It's in limbo at the moment with regards to the cup final for Schmeichel. I know Scott Bain's leaving at the end of the season. He's currently, well, he's third choice, but he's currently on the bench every week. I know they've been linked with Ross Duhan, Celtic, but just to see if I can see Celtic going in for a goalie. So I'm interested to see if Scott Bain gets a final hurrah, which would be deserving because he's been sitting on the bench for about 4 or 5 seasons. But there we go. Ralston, Ralston, obviously. But just to see what happens, obviously Greg Taylor will probably be the final furlong for him as well at Celtic. He's obviously been playing a lot as well recently. It'll probably be the final furlong with Tierney coming in. Scales and Carter Vickers will be interested to see if they keep them two. Obviously they played last week, but as I say, I think Celtic will make changes. I think Trusty could maybe get a wee bit of game time before the cup final. I can see Luke McCowan get a bit of game time. Yang maybe now Rocky. They've obviously had a young guy called, what's his name? Is it McCardle? Somebody McCardle? Sean McCardle, who's been doing well for under 18. So I think now would be the ideal time if he's almost ready for the first team to give him minutes, to get him in the building, and to get him accustomed to Celtic and their tradition, their values, their culture, and most importantly, their standards. So I'm expecting changes for Celtic tomorrow. I don't think there'll be too many changes because Brendan Rodgers is always complimentary of the opposition, but I think at the same time, I think there'll be 2 or 3 changes that will be supplemented with still enough quality that Celtic will go to win the game.
And of course, I don't know if you saw this today, that see the A side, Uganese is looking at Real Atati.
Yeah, Michael's away. Yeah, I think Rio Hatate would be an excellent piece of business for Udinese. Hope from a Celtic point of view that they keep him, but just to see what happens. That's one position I think Celtic will maybe need to look at moving forward because as much as I think Maida and Hatate provide a lot of options for Celtic, James Forrest is obviously an experienced campaigner. He's the most all-rounded player as far as Celtic's concerned. I think at the same time as well, moving forward, are you going to have a front line of Forrest, Hatate, and Maida? Who knows? I don't think it's the right approach for Celtic to go down. So I can see Brendan Rodgers looking towards the foreign market moving forward. I can see him, as he has done before, looking at players from England. But for Hatate, I think he'll leave with Celtic fans' best wishes because what I know Maida isn't in this conversation for leaving the club, but Hatate has been excellent in terms of getting into unaccustomed positions, being a bit unorthodox in how he plays, and getting into the wee pockets and doing very, very well for the team. So I think he'll be a good player. I think he'll be a big miss if he goes, and if he goes, then I think it's another example, Michael, that we obviously have a good product here in Scottish football. I know Hatate's not Scottish, but I think it's a good example to say, right, okay, there's a wee bit of a link-up going on between us here in Scotland and obviously the City A with Lewis Ferguson and Scott McTominay and Billy Gilmore and Josh Doig as well, of course. So, yeah, I think if he does go to Italy, it's another shining light in the armour that is Scottish football and the transition to City A.
Of course, the worst kept secret ever, Dave. Maida won the Player of the Year. I think they should gave the Player of the Year team in December. But that's my personal opinion. Brendan Rodgers said that we need to play well because Hibs are a good team and David is a good manager, and we're looking forward to the game. And of course, Dave, I don't know if you remember last 2 seasons ago about this time, Hibs actually beat Celtic, but this time it was at Eastern Road. I think it was 4-2.
I remember the game. Celtic had the league wrapped up with 5 games to go, did they not? And then obviously Hibs, I think, beat Celtic 4-2. That proved to be quite crucial, if I remember correctly, with regards to getting Europe, because was that the season after that Hibs played Aston Villa?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. I know from a Hibs point of view, that seemed quite crucial, that game, because it seemed like it was in absolute jeopardy before the game. And then they obviously got that result against Celtic, and then I think they beat St Mirren, if I'm correct in saying. But yeah, I think for Celtic, that game was at Easter Road. The game you're on about. I think it's a different proposition. The fact that the game's at Celtic tomorrow. I think the fact that there'll be fans. If it was away from home, obviously there's the same pressure with Celtic 100%. But I think there's an extra element of pressure tomorrow, and an extra incentive and extra motivation for the Celtic fans to give to the Celtic players, knowing they're at home, knowing they can end the season well, and that's an important aspect heading into the next season, because the last thing you want to do is be remembered for what you've done at home. Now, what I would say, looking ahead and planning ahead, is I don't think it's the end of the world for Celtic if they draw Aberdeen on Wednesday, for example. If they go and beat Hibs and go and beat St Mirren and draw Pittodrie, it's not the end of the world, because it's still big momentum heading to the cup final. And a lot of Celtic fans, as much as they'll spend their hard-earned money going up to the Grant City on a Wednesday night, at the same time as well, I think it's important that they're winning the home games. They've done so with the precision this season so far. And, yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 Celtic tomorrow.
What do you think of James Forrest, Dave? Right, because obviously if they win the Scottish Cup, he goes two above Bobby Lennox as the most decorated Celtic player ever. But I know that there's some Celtic fans that still divided about Forrest, and I find that hard to believe because he's been at Celtic for more than 10 years. Obviously, he got a testimonial last year, but some Celtic fans don't like him. I mean, I don't understand that.
He's an experienced campaigner, as you say. He's a Scottish Cup away from being the most decorated player. I think for James Forrest, I think he's a squad player at best. He's not a player that's going to go and play 40, 50 games a season for you. Excuse Michael, by the way, because he seems to be having a wee bit of a sneeze there. But yeah, on Forrest, you see it yourself. He obviously had wee chances. Was it against Rangers? It was either Rangers or Dundee. I think it was maybe Rangers. He had made chances and he got into good areas, and yeah, still a threat. He's not the player he was 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. He's not the player he was. What I would say about Forrest is, I still think from a player perspective, I still think from a dressing room perspective, you've got Carl McGregor. I think from a homegrown perspective, in terms of the magnitude of the games that Celtic played across the season, which is a lot. I still think you need players like Forrest in the dressing room, because as much as I don't think he offers the same instinct on the pitch, I think off the pitch he'll offer a lot more.
Okay, yeah, so, what do you make of Celtic this season, Dave? Obviously, that Aberdeen's going to come up against them Wednesday night in the cup final as well. But what do you make of them this season? I mean, I think if you talk to a lot of Celtic fans this season, a lot of Celtic fans would say, well, we need to progress in Europe and maybe win another treble. They're on their way to winning another treble, Aberdeen, and you guys might have something to say about that. But I think they've did well in Europe this season, but I think it's because of the format of the Champions League that's going to help them.
I'll start domestically. They've been even better this year domestically. I find it ludicrous, to be brutally honest with you, Michael, that people were saying there was a genuine title challenge this season. And I'm not just being Aberdeen, I mean Rangers as well. Rangers came into the season with a lot of optimism with the way it ended last season. But ultimately, you looked at Celtic's recruitment. Kasper Schmeichel was a big signing. Maeda, I know he wasn't a signing specifically, but Maeda just came on to a better game this season. Jota, he's not the player he was in the first spell, but Jota, prior to his injury, had a huge part to play. Ida, he divides opinion like Forrest, but Adam Ida has popped up with some important goals this season. Defensively, you look a lot better. I mean, there was the possibility, if I correct me if I'm wrong here, there was a possibility for a record about October, November time for the least amount of goals conceded or clean sheets or something. So that just goes to show you.
Yeah.
I might be wrong when I say that, but I do know you kept a lot of clean sheets in that October, November time, which was a huge plus. The way in which you won that first Glasgow derby against Rangers at the start of the season, what was it, 5-0? And
Yeah.
it was. I'm trying to think of a stronger word than embarrassing or a better word than embarrassing, Michael. But it was quite. It was deplorable. It was deplorable how Rangers played. But irrespective, Celtic did what they had to do, and I think what Celtic are good at is they're good at playing mind games, but not just mind games as well. They're good at shutting out all the outside noise, and that's been a pleasing aspect. I think they've got enough real characters and enough real leaders in the team to shut out that outside noise. But I think Celtic's been excellent domestically. Whenever they have had a blip, they've bounced back, like Johnstone. Johnstone obviously beat Celtic, but I forgot who they beat, but they beat somebody quite comfortably the week later, didn't they? Was it Ross County? Was it
Hearts.
Hearts? They won that really comfortably the week after, and that was when we were like, right, okay, that's when you knew they were a wounded animal, but an animal that was shaken, yeah, but an animal that was determined to get back and kick a few bulls, that's for sure. So, yeah, I think for Celtic, they've been excellent domestically. You're right. I think, as far as Europe's concerned, I think the format had a huge part to play in that. But irrespective, I think they have had some valiant performances in the Champions League. What a game. Well, first leg, there was a huge offside call for us after 3 minutes at Parkhead. And then in Germany, what a game that was. And it was soul destroying what happened in the aftermath of that game. But of course, the season that wasn't psychological, and that was the most important thing. But no, it's been an excellent season, and as much as Rangers have deteriorated, I'd also argue that Celtic have accelerated, and that's a huge compliment to obviously the way that the team have played and the way in which they've obviously utilised the squad that they've had. And as much as I think they need a refresh next season, I think at the same time as well, Celtic continue to conjure out quality after quality after quality. Investments is one thing, but get your recruitment right is the other, and that's one thing that Brendan Rodgers is good at. And it's a key trait in his managerial sorry, that probably goes a bit underrated in terms of how he does it and how he goes about his business.
Graham's asking the comment on the chat, Dave. Basically, from an Aberdeen point of view, is it worrying for everyone else just how domestically dominantly Celtic will and will probably continue it for a wee while to come? So, what do you think of that from like an Aberdeen kind of point of view?
I think it's irrelevant. Before I start answering the question, I think it's irrelevant from an Aberdeen point of view, Michael. But what I would say, it's an interesting question Graham asks actually, because I'm going to look at this in a few ways. Next season, possibly, and I'll reiterate, possibly will be Brendan Rodgers' last season. We don't know, right? But there's that hint in there. The media are hinting. Brendan Rodgers himself is hinting it. Next season could be Brendan Rodgers' last season. Now, to answer Graham's question, I think next season it's Celtics again. I cannot see where Rangers are going to go from being a team of mediocre peasants, being brutally honest, to a team that's going to go and really take the league by the scruff of the neck and go and overtake Celtic. Because the whole DNA about the club is all over the place. And it's still going to be all over the place by Christmas time, let's be brutally honest, because even if the takeover goes through at Ibrox, I still don't think it's like Rome. It's not going to get built, and indeed, it's not going to get fixed overnight. So next season, I think it's straightforward again. It's the season after that I'm intrigued about. So I'm looking at 2026, 2027 onwards. That's the season I'm intrigued about because the Celtic board have been renowned for making bad managerial appointments. Neil Lennon, obviously, we get appointed second time, was a car crash. They obviously resuscitated that with Ange Postecoglou. That earned the Celtic board a bit of credibility again. Brendan Rodgers has also earned the board a bit of credibility again. But then they've had appointments like Ronnie Deila, who I know obviously Rangers came into the league after his last league title. But again, that flattered to deceive. That was underwhelming. So Celtic's a big club, and from a boardroom level, you need to be quite switched on. You have to be quite solely focused on the job in hand. And I think for a Celtic point of view, it's going to be interesting to see the route they go down. If I'm on the board at Celtic, I'm looking at possibly 6 months down the line, seeing what's out there. Maybe looking at maybe making a decision and going, right, okay, Brendan, you've done what you've had to do. You've uh, you've emulated the job that Ange Postecoglou has done, and you've built on it. I think we'll get proof of the pudding towards Graham's question next year, not now.
Okay, let's move on to the game at Ibrox. Dave, and it's Rangers against Aberdeen. We'll touch upon Rangers in a minute, but it's a big week for Aberdeen. A big couple of weeks for Aberdeen, actually. Going to Ibrox on Sunday, playing Celtic on Wednesday night in the league, and then the week later, they come back to Hampden for the final of the Scottish Cup.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because as much as you want to get Europe rounded off and start preparing for a cup final, which is interesting. I'll come on to the cup final in a minute, just briefly, but it's an Rangers won it. Rangers haven't won it the Ferguson Ibrox, have they?
No, well, that's what I was going to say. Rangers haven't won, believe it or not, Dave. They haven't won at Ibrox for 7 games.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm confident for Sunday, being an Aberdeen fan. I'll be honest with you. From an Aberdeen point of view, we've played Rangers sides who have been better than what they have now, albeit we've not been the same proposition and won games. And that's why I'm really confident ahead of this game on Sunday. Obviously, I'm happy for me to get a slap in the face on Sunday night, perhaps, but I think just the way we're playing, the way in which we're taking teams on, obviously, St Mirren was a blip. And the reason why I mention that word blip is I wasn't confident for that game at Paisley. It's laughable when I say that, but St Mirren's a totally different ball game to Rangers. Rangers, you can get up for, you can get motivated, you know the rivalry in the stands with the fans and various things like that. I think for just swallowing something there. I think for this game on Sunday, I think Aberdeen will look to go on the front foot. I think they'll look to take the game to Rangers. I think Rangers have to start the game quite well. I think if they don't start the game quite well, the crowd will get onto them. Aberdeen are a good team in terms of when teams are cold, they will punish you. I think that's where Aberdeen could punish Rangers on Sunday. I think Jimmy Tilleen's overdue a big result against the Glasgow team as well. You obviously beat Rangers at Pittodrie in October. But I feel, just to rubber stamp what's been an excellent first season, or could potentially be an excellent first season for Jimmy Tilleen, I feel he needs a big win away from home. I feel he needs to go to Glasgow and get a big result. And Sunday, I think, provides the ideal opportunity to go and do that. So, yeah, there's obviously a lot of talk about next season as well, but I think just looking at Sunday first and foremost, I think it's a real opportunity. And if Rangers don't turn up with the right attitude and we're on it, I can see us getting the results. So I'll be interested to see how Rangers approach this game. And I think they'll look at this and be interested to see if they are a wounded animal from what's been happening because I know it's a bit irrelevant what I'm going to say here, but it's all fine and well getting up for a game against Celtic, but when you look at the games this season, Michael, Rangers have gotten up for games against Celtic. Like they've obviously got results in 3 out of the 4 games. But when they've played Aberdeen, there hasn't been the same oomph about them. There hasn't been the same, right, we're going to win our battles, we're going to go and do what good teams or excellent teams do. There's not been that same mentality of winning games whenever they've played Aberdeen. And that same mantra goes for whenever they've played other teams of similar ilk to Aberdeen in the league, like Dundee United, for example. Um, they've turned up and they've been sluggish, toothless, underwhelming. If Rangers aren't on it on Sunday, yeah, it's not going to be a good afternoon for the 50,000 that are there.
Do you think Jimmy Cullen would have learned from his mistakes? The last time they met at Piccoli because Aberdeen was miles ahead. He made the subs and Aberdeen got points that day. It might have felt a defeat for you and all the Aberdeen fans as well. So do you think that he'll pick the same kind of starting 11 as he did at Piccoli the last time?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like 2 points dropped the last time. There's no getting away from that. But I want to caveat that. It's probably a different approach and a different point of view that I'm going to make in comparison to other Aberdeen fans. But what I would say is, I think it's been pleasing that we obviously ran Rangers ragged at Pittodrie back in October. We obviously played them recently, as you allude to there. We're 2-1 up with seconds to go, and Rangers obviously capitalise and make it 2 apiece. And yeah, the subs had a major impact to play in that game in question. And yeah, Jimmy will have learned from that. Obviously, I think Jimmy's had a good season, albeit he had that bad run. And I think just to shut up a few doubters, but also I think to just justify to certain sections of Aberdeen fans the job that he's done this season, I do think he needs to go to Glasgow and get at least a point on Sunday. I think that would be a good result for me. Ultimately, if he goes and wins, I think the perception with Jimmy would maybe change a little bit with certain sections of Aberdeen fans as well, because Jimmy will not be forgiven for that 15 game 15 game winless run. So that could be big for Jimmy. I think he'll look to set up and be bold and brave, but I think he'll look to get like some Shane Morris on the ball more, Nisbet on the ball more, Paolo Varsha on the ball more, because Paolo Varsha, pardon me, excuse me, Paolo Varsha, Morris and Nisbet will trouble Rangers just with their leniency defensively.
Of course, Jimmy Cullen was the manager, announced as the manager of the month today as well. He also said to the media today, it's a good game for us, but we're going there for 3 points. Aberdeen will bring a big support to Glasgow as they always do, Dave and Sunday, but they will be wanting to come down to get kind of all 3 points.
Absolutely. Because that's my point. It's like, I think Jimmy has been excellent for Aberdeen this season, but I think he needs to, as I say, I'll repeat it again, I think he needs to go to Glasgow and get a win. I think Aberdeen managers in the past who have done decent jobs or good jobs, both of those elements, they've done well against the sides like your Hearts as your Hibses, but ultimately when they've been in Glasgow, they maybe have come up short, and that's where a lot of people get frustrated. I think being an Aberdeen manager, you're defined. Pardon me, sorry. I think you're defined on getting results and getting Europe against sides round about you. I also think in the last decade, I think McInnes kind of maybe changed this narrative. I think you're maybe defined in how you get results against an old firm as well. I think that's a big thing. I think, as you found out in McInnes did a, on the whole, decent job. But when you look at McInnes as well, he started off tremendously well against both Celtic and Rangers, getting some big results. And then it tailored off, it petered out. And when it was becoming to the end of his tenure, he was becoming under pressure, because of results, like he would draw, pick up a sloppy point against Carly or County or Johnstone or some of those small sides. But ultimately as well, I think he would get like a 2-0 or a 3-0 when Rangers were vulnerable, for example, or when Celtic were maybe in Champions League action on a Wednesday night. Or I remember there was a game, for example, Pittodrie. Aberdeen were going along really, really well. And a lot of questions were like, how's Aberdeen going to be in this game? What's the mentality going to be like? What's Celtic's mentality going to be like? Because Celtic were top but not firing on all cylinders. Celtic won that game 3-0. Brendan Rodgers came up with the ultimate game plan. I think, I can't remember who's, it'll come to me. But anyway, Celtic won that game 3-0, and the pressure was back on McInnes. And Goodwin, I remember parking the bus against Celtic before Christmas one year. Celtic won the game 1-0. That was the knife out for him. There was a 3-2 game, which people were annoyed about as well. So I think the blueprint of being a successful Aberdeen manager is reaching Europe, is winning cups, but I also think it's interestingly enough, I think it also is get results against the Glasgow sides. Now, I think any Aberdeen fan would bite your hand off to win the Scottish Cup rather than finish fourth. I think at the same time, I think Jimmy needs to be renowned for getting results in Glasgow.
Rangers, on the other hand, Aberdeen's had a brilliant season under Jimmy Coving. All depends on the Scottish Cup game coming up in a few weeks' time. But it's the opposite for Barry Ferguson and Rangers. I mean, I can't believe this. Like, they've not won a home game at Ibrox in 7 games, albeit they won the European game against Fenerbahce, but that was a penalty shootout. Now that must be worrying times for kind of Rangers fans as well, and Aberdeen will be happy to go there at this time of year. But I just wanted to ask you about the takeover, Dave. Obviously, we saw the 49ers coming in and to Glasgow the other day and to see Ibrox, but I'm still not convinced they're coming in, because, or else if they're coming in, they're taking their time about it.
And it's a bit frustrating if you're a Rangers fan because, as you say, the 49ers were in Glasgow, but it doesn't feel like there's any concrete movement on that front. I think for Rangers fans, I think they've every right to be a bit frustrated. They have no idea about the impetus, the direction they head into for the next season. So I think for Rangers, I think they need to end the season well. I think Sunday, as much as they've nothing to play for realistically, I think Sunday's a massive game in the complexity of the long-term aspirations. Just in the sense, Michael, that if they get a good win on Sunday, it alleviates to a certain extent the pressure off the board. I wouldn't say Barry Ferguson's under pressure because it's not necessarily his fault. What I would say is I think it earns Barry Ferguson a bit of a good praise because Barry Ferguson's a Rangers legend based on his playing career, but Barry Ferguson does not want to be defined on not winning at Ibrox. He's got, what has he got, Michael? 2 attempts to go win it, maybe one more. Liverpool before the season finishes.
Yeah, I can't remember who they play. I think it's Wednesday night, and then they go away at Hibs.
Right, they'll be hoping to Dundee on Wednesday. They've got 2 opportunities to win at Ibrox before the season's out. It's Sunday against Aberdeen, and it's Wednesday against Dundee United. Both teams will be eager to frustrate 100%, but I'd argue at the same time as well, it's a real opportunity for Rangers to go and really take the game to these sides and really go and end the season on a high. Because if they don't, Rangers got Hibs in the final day, as you say there, Michael, and if Rangers go and be winless in 3, there's going to be real animosity towards Ferguson, but there's going to be an animosity towards the board as well. I think it would just, aside from that, I think it would just supplement the job that Barry Ferguson has done in terms of he's an accustomed war league manager, and that's all he was. He came in because he was a boyhood hero for Rangers. He was at the time a popularity. It was a popularity stint for the club because Rangers were in complete disarray, and they couldn't get somebody coming in like what they've done in the past with Graham Murray, where it could potentially have been an absolute car crash. Now, if Barry Ferguson had been in the role for 3 months, this would have been a car crash as well. And let's be brutally honest, I can say this because I'm no longer really involved in the media side of the game. He's a media darling. That's all he is.
Yeah, I think as well that I think he was brought in to get the fans kind of like back on side, and the fans have been back on side to a certain extent, Dave. But you're right. I mean, this is not Rangers. This is not his team. But I mean, he's come out with weird statements over the week. I think it was the game after St Mirren, was it? And he says, "Oh, this is not a Rangers team now. If you were in that Rangers team, you would be like that. Well, okay. Well, you think this is not a Rangers team? I'm away. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play for you now."
I don't think it's a Rangers team. He's right when he says that, but it's the context in which he went by it, which was a bit disappointing if I was a Rangers fan. Yeah, I don't think there's enough players in that dressing room that have the mantra, the will, the bottle to gain success. And that's, Graham was obviously asking that question earlier on this evening. That's why I genuinely do believe that next season will be never straight and narrow as far as the title race is concerned. And I say title race in inverted commas. I can't see Rangers. It's impossible. It's possible unless you've got the right manager or you sort out one or two things, big things I may add, behind the scenes. It's impossible for a side to be as derelict as what Rangers were to go and then just make that next step and go up 5 levels to be genuine title contenders again. It simply does not happen. The Rangers at the start of Philippe Clement's tenure had a honeymoon period. But I'm just trying to think about this here, Michael. What have Rangers generally done in the last 5 years that's made them genuine title contenders? Apart from Philippe Clement's honeymoon. They've done absolutely nothing within the space of 5 years. Gerrard did an excellent job in terms of stopping 10, but ultimately that was Celtic having one of the worst seasons they've had in a generation or 2 generations. So I think Rangers need a radical overhaul as a football club, and I think it's up to Patrick Stewart to go and eradicate that now.
And I think as well, Dave, you're right in terms of like, I mean, well, see if the 49ers come in tonight, right, and they buy Rangers over tonight, like they still got to buy decent players, right, and these players might not be up to the cut in Scottish football. So I mean, what I'm trying to say is, if you bring in a whole new squad of players, they might not be up to the job.
Yeah, you're right. And just on that point, I'm going to make a point to you here. I think Rangers should be going for Sean Dyche as new manager. The reason why I say that is I think Rangers need a man that's is going to not necessarily scare the dressing room, but I think they need a person in that's going to create an environment where it's going to be hostile again. Not within the dressing room, but within the culture that is Ibrox, within the hotbed that is Ibrox. I think they need somebody of that ilk again. Now, Gerrard done that. I think Gerrard's tenure at Rangers would have been a different perception to it altogether had he not stopped 10. But I think at the same time, Gerrard aside, the last manager they've had that's had an element of hostility about him and really threatened to really obviously throw away any jeopardy that Celtic maybe had about winning titles consistently season after season. You're probably going back to the pre-Hardman days with Walter Smith. And I think Sean Dyche, may be unfair to suggest this, but I think he's got similar principles to what Walter Smith had. And I think that could be healthy moving forward.
Okay, that's the game on Sunday. Rangers and Aberdeen on 12 o'clock kickoff. Before we go, Dave, we must look at the Premiership playoff quarter-final first leg on Tuesday night. It was Packet Thistle 1. Packet Thistle 0, Ayr United 1. Second leg tonight at Somerset Park, 8:15 kickoff. What are you hoping for, Dave? I don't know about you, but I'm just hoping for a decent game of football because the game wasn't up too much on Tuesday night.
Oh, you're bang on. I want a decent game of football. I think Tuesday Thistle were off it. I think Thistle had been coming into this game on Tuesday, playing some good stuff. They got a really good win at Livingston prior to that first instalment on Tuesday. Thistle, obviously, they showed great character to go win 2-1 against Falkirk, the champions elect, albeit they put the champagne in ice for an extra week. I think Thistle were off it on Tuesday. I can see. I haven't seen the team. I'll try and get a team line before we finish off this evening. But I do think Thistle need to make changes for this evening. I think it was. I think Thistle had the plan B, but no plan A, but no plan B. But as for Ayr United, I think the playoffs could be the start of 7. Obviously, if they get beat tonight, that's a slap in the face to me. But I think the playoffs could be the start of something exciting for Ayr United. I think they've got a capable squad. I think they've got a squad of goal scorers. Obviously, George Oakley. They've got Jamie Murphy as well. They've got quality all over the park. I think a lot of that has been down to what Scott Brown's done. I don't think Ayer's got the best team in the league. I'd argue they don't have the best team within the playoff structure alone. But what I would say is I think Scott Brown is growing into being a manager. I think he's maturing into being a decent manager, and I think sometimes if you have a team of players or a squad of players that maybe aren't of the highest level, I think sometimes having a decent manager like Scott Brown, because he's as young as 36, 37, 38, and he's already managed well in the region of 50 to maybe even just under 100 games. I'll try and get a quick look before I continue, but I think a huge part of why Ayer's done well this season is because of Scott Brown and how he's set up his team. And Conor McLaren's been a decent player as well this season. He obviously linked up well with Jamie Murphy for the goal there, but obviously Scott Brown's 39, just to clarify. But yeah, I think Ayer's got a lot going right for him, and I think I think they could really take the game to Thistle tonight. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Just to clarify, that was. Well, yeah, there we go. Scott Brown's 39 years old, Michael, and this tonight will be his 125th game of management. And that tells you what you need to know because he's still a young manager, yet he's getting the best out of players. And the Fleetwood is a bit of a freak experience considering everything in the turmoil that was going on at Fleetwood at that precise time. So I think he's getting the opportunity to develop his own mantra at Ayr United, and that's a welcome thing moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to Mitchell Fagan the other night in the show, a big Ayr United fan, and he worked for Ayr United, and he was saying to me that Ayr United is doing a lot of work on, not even on the park, but off the park as well, because behind one of the ends of Ayr United, they're actually building a kind of like training ground as well.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of great things. And I think a lot of that's down to chairman at the club. He really has pumped a lot of money in hospitality and training, as you say there. The whole environment at the club. I really think Ayr are going in the right direction. I think if it wasn't for the fresh investment coming in and David obviously pulling and doing things the correct way, I think Ayr would have been a scathing League One club. They'd have been on the periphery of that, but what a job they've done behind the scenes as well, and long may it continue.
Yep, so there we go. So that's a roundup finished for this week. Don't forget, Robbie and Reagan will be back at 10 o'clock tonight for the reaction show to the Ayr United Packet Thistle game, and I'll be back in Sunday in the hot seat, keeping Robbie company when we look back at the weekend's action, including the game at Ibrox between Rangers and Dave's Aberdeen. And don't forget, we'll be back on Tuesday night as well for the semi-final first leg of the playoffs. Who will that be? Ayr United or Packet Thistle? Of course, they will be up against Livingston. I'm not actually sure where that first leg is as well. But we'll find out maybe
It depends who wins tonight. It depends who wins tonight.
All right, so depends who's win tonight. Is it home first? Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for all your comments. Thanks to Dave and thanks to Robbie. Of course, Robbie will be back tonight at 10 o'clock with Reagan looking back in the 90 minutes. And of course, I will be back on Sunday with Robbie at 3 o'clock.
The Locker Room, with all the sports news you need.